Hello, Justin.
Hello, Deanna.
How are you?
I am well. How are
Good.
you?
I'm good. Are you ready for
Yes.
another uplifting conversation?
Yes.
So today we're talking about sabbaticals and
Mm.
why they're essential for personal and professional growth. But sabbaticals was like not a word that I really knew until until like we got married. Or it might have been in college. I don't know. But can you explain like what this magical word even is?
Well, I think it's most commonly happens in academics where folks usually after they get tenured, usually after they publish a big book, it's kind of built into their contract to have a year off, an academic year off, to reflect, to recoup, maybe to do some research. But I think for good purpose and good reason, and also for very interesting reasons too, it is kind of trickled in other ways where it's not necessarily just a professor, just tenure, just an academic year off, where other people, this is what I'm doing, where I am intentionally taking a time of rest from my work for the purpose of reflecting on the work, getting a little distance from it, and returning back to it refreshed and with fresh perspective. So, yeah, how does that align with your perspective and your take on sabbaticals?
I'm gonna tell you how it aligns because the first time I heard it, I was like, I'm doing that. Like, that is amazing. I am
Mhm,
not a full-time professor. I am not on tenure track. I know this is not part of like my profession, in the way that we think
mhm,
about it, but that concept is brilliant. Being able to intentionally take a step back and really reflect on what you're doing. And I think it's such a cool idea. I don't know why it isn't part of all of our work, right? And really built into it. For me, I think what's been really exciting is that you and I, as husband and wife, have decided to actually build this into our marriage and build it into our family. So, for those
you
of
wanna
you
tell
who
the story of it, of how that started and how that ramped up? Because I think every time we talk about it, people do a double take, and there's some, confusion, some incredulity, like, "How in the
don't
world did you do that?" So do you wanna talk about how you got into that and how you make it work?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we were doing it with intention until I don't know, would you say like our 2019 trip was like our most intentional one? I don't know.
Right.
Actually, even before that, we were doing some ones with the kids, but I don't think we were calling it sabbatical at those times. I think we were just
Mhm.
like, we're going to be intentional about traveling. Well, one thing I will say though, I made a list when we first got married and I was like, these are non-negotiable things. And I was like, look, even if we have to rub our pennies together, we will travel. Remember that?
Well, what do you say
Because
to people who say, "Oh, that's a privileged luxury. I can't do that. I can't travel." Because I mean, it's more difficult for some than others, but and I think I was very resistant to it because I thought that as well.
yeah.
So how did rubbing the pennies work? And then also, why did you think it was worth it to pinch those pennies for something like travel where lots of people that's very far on down on their list?
Well, for me, it was always something that was a gift, that my parents gave me. And we didn't have to have like extravagant
Mm.
experiences. One of my favorite things that my mom did for me as a child is we just like Friday, come home from school, open the door, put our backpacks down. She would have a duffel bag packed. We'd get in the car, really
A
with like
cooler full of food.
yeah, cooler full of food. The only thing that we would eat while we were on the road was like bologna sandwiches. We'd have those juice pop things or the ones that you remember the old school ones where you had to like peel the top off, but they were shaped like this,
A
those
barrel.
yeah, the
Yes.
barrels. Yeah,
Yes.
and so we wouldn't necessarily eat anything fancy. We'd go see a distant cousin, but we'd be on the road
Mm,
and I would have a map and, we'd be looking at this atlas map and just driving and seeing the country. And maybe we would be gone for a night. We'd stay at a family's house or we'd stay at a really cheap motel along the way. But that sense of like adventure and
mhm,
seeing the country and meeting people and getting outside of my comfort zone, I think really did a lot to develop my character and so
mm,
I think that we can get stuck in when we don't get out and see that the world is different and people think differently and do things differently, it's really easy to get stuck in this idea that like the way that we do it is the way that everybody does it.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to
And
do
it's kind of like we think about sabbatical, oh, I'm taking a break from work, but I think you added another important component to it. It's you take a break from your everyday reality. Also, you take a
yeah.
break from yourself. Like you
Yeah.
leave where you are. It's not just I stop working, it's that I stop with the inertia of this is who I am, this is where I go, this is what I do. And you
Yeah.
expand it and you challenge it, even if it's staying two towns over, or if I don't have the time for it, it's just driving a different way to work. But I think I hear you saying
Yeah.
being very intentional about I will remove all the trappings of my everyday life that allows me to repeat limited stories about myself. I'm like, no, we're going to parachute into this completely different context and
Right.
see who we are there.
Absolutely. I mean, even like literally driving to the city adjacent to the one that you're in. Like that could
Mhm.
be that's a trip. That's moving. That's getting outside your comfort zone. So for me, that's what it means. And I think like one thing that I really appreciate about you, and I appreciate that you've adopted this, right? Because I really believe in creative constraints. So for me, if it's like, you know what, this year we have $100 and that's what we got, and that's gonna be like our, that's the travel budget. Okay, cool.
Mm.
That's awesome because we know that. Now let's figure out what we could do with that $100 as opposed to being, like, down on ourselves about that. Like, no, like, that's what it is. Cool. Let's figure out how we can stretch it, you know? And I think that's what I meant about the penny. So, thank you for
Yeah.
the question. And I'm, like, real good at finding deals. I'm a
Yeah.
hunter,
And I think that's
so
actually part of it too, is
mhm,
for I think I encounter a lot of folks for whom it's too easy to say, we can't do that. That's impossible. And they're thinking about the easiest parts of the package deals that are often the most expensive. I think being part of the sabbatical and actually wrapping your head around that transition is doing the difficult work and the research to find those details and to find the deals. And then also,
yeah,
like, you're going off the traveled path and it can be a little nerve wracking. But I think that's actually also part of it too, is
yeah,
I will go into this new place, but also I will book at different star level places than I normally would. And uh, I'll dine in ways different than I normally do. It's actually part of the budgeting and part of the practicality, but I think it's also part of the sabbatical process and all
yeah,
that. What could seem like fuss and difficulty, I think it's also important part of the sabbatical is telling yourself that you are worth this research, that you are worth this looking, that you're worth the analyzing to make the budget work and be creative.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So your original question was, how did this get started for us? So I think, we kind of as a family built up that muscle. Our kids at a very young age were part of the planning process. They were part of the design of how we would go about seeing things. And we had themes that sometimes we would do themes and then we would use the themes as kind of our guiding force. Like, we're gonna go find donuts today and we got to find donuts, and that's so like you remember, like that's what we did, but it again pushed our boundaries and it helped the kids get involved. And so anyways, but our first like big sabbatical where it was like we're gone for a month was actually when we went to Mexico, and that trip was really like, you know what, here's our creative constraints, and I'm going to tell you what they were. One of them was a creative constraint for Justin. He does not like to be hot, and we were going to go in the summertime. And so I needed to find something that was not going to be like a lovely place, but not too hot. So that was the first thing that was on our list. We had some financial constraints. So that was another thing. I knew that it was going to be important for us to be in the same time zone just because of some of the other things that were going to be going on before and after. There was a couple of things that I knew I was going to have to check in at least one or two times during it. And so time zone was really important. So that's really what we had. Those were kind of the big things. Was there anything else, Justin, that we were looking for?
Oh, you were looking
Oh,
for
Spanish.
language challenge,
Yeah,
Spanish
Spanish
speaking.
speaking. Yeah, and
Mhm.
Spanish speaking because our children were really interested, and had some, like, curiosity about Spanish, and I used to be pretty fluent and wanted to get back to getting a place where I could practice my own Spanish. So those were our criteria, and I literally just typed those things into a search engine bar, and the first city that came up was San Miguel de Allende, and I went online and I what did I do first? Oh, I went online, I saw some tickets, I bought the tickets, and then I called Justin and told him, like, "Hey, I just bought us
We're
tickets to"
going.
yeah, I just bought us
Okay.
tickets to Mexico, for a month, and he's like, "Oh, did you find a place to stay?" I'm like, "Not yet, but, this is how much of the budget I had to use for the tickets, so this is how much we have left. So I'm gonna try and figure that out next. Are you cool with that?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "Okay, great." And I also knew that when we went, I wanted to make sure that the children had some like really cool experiences. So the other thing that I did was I started to get involved online in like different communities that were geared towards parents. So I actually like made a ton of friends just online with people before I even got there to figure out like what are some cool things that my kids could get like involved in and like what who are parents or other people that I could meet with. So when we got there, it was we just like immediately sort of had like a network of people to connect with. So
And
our
I think that's
kids,
a huge part that I think makes sabbaticals successful is it's finding out a new portion of who you are, which isn't just passive consumption of pleasure.
mm,
It's I think there's a difference between sabbatical and tourism,
yeah,
and not to knock tourism, but that
yeah,
you are a traveler. You are going someplace else and finding things to contribute, and I think it's important to rest, but I think a huge part of the sabbatical, as opposed to a very long vacation, is that you are reminding yourself that it is not this clear dichotomy that we often make between, I'm either 100% working or 100% playing.
yeah.
And we pride ourselves often in the United States in 2025. I work hard, play hard. Like, what about also some moderation? Like, what about we go to a place and we're not, eating to our heart's delight on a beach and doing nothing, which we tend to get actually a little more anxious about. But we're doing these cultural events. And I think the key difference is developing new community too. Like, I'm
Mhm.
doing things where I'm learning, I'm stretching, I'm contributing back, and I'm developing community also. I think those are key characteristics of sabbatical versus just vacation also.
Yeah. I will tell you one of the biggest concerns I hear from people. It just, I had actually multiple conversations with people just today about like I'm really interested in doing something like this, but I'm worried because if I take a break, like, does that mean that I'm going to fall behind in my other stuff? Like, I don't really know if I can do this. And I like full transparency, that was one of the biggest worries that I had. Like, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, like, if I
yeah.
step away for a month, like, what is going to happen?" Right? And especially for Justin and I mean, we're principals in the company that we operate. So, what happens when your 2 leaders, like, step away? And that's a very real concern. And so I want to address that because I do
Mhm.
think that that's a real concern. I know it's something that stops people from taking time, even vacation, right? That like, what will happen if I have to just come back to a mound of work? Then I don't think it makes sense sometimes to just even take that time. Forget sabbatical. I don't even know if I can do vacation. But here's what I will tell you. I think it actually wastes more time when you don't take the time for rest and relaxation and for reflection
Yep.
because what happens is that you could be really busy. Yeah, doing all the things. I know what busy looks like. Right? It kind of looks like that. It also is that noise.
Sounds like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like that too. You're really busy, but are you actually doing the things that are important?
Yep. And
We
are you
can get
getting out of
caught.
your own way? Or like if you get too much in that pattern, you confuse your busyness for business.
Yeah,
Like, and you get in this mode of, well, I just have to be operating high function all the time and
yep.
not necessarily accomplishment.
Yeah.
And what been really impressed with watching you do is, to the leader who's worried about coming back to a mound of work, we'll have like some embracing like ways to minimize that and to make it practically feasible is one thing. But from a philosophical standpoint, then train up your team.
Yeah.
This is an enormous opportunity. The sabbatical is an opportunity for you to learn a new you, but it's also an awesome opportunity for your team to learn a new team, what it looks like for them to operate with you gone. And then it's another part of the sabbatical is gearing up to, hey, I'm figuring out, doing all the research, finding all the
Right.
deals, the creative constraints that you mentioned. But one of the creative constraints is I will onboard my team to what it looks like to operate for this amount of time while I'm gone.
Yeah. And it's awesome. I've been so fortunate to be able to work with such great people. And I am blown away every time we come back to see not only how they operated while we were gone, but like what they did better, and
Yeah.
it's just like so cool, like where I was like a cog, like where I was slowing things down. So I think that that's really huge. But also when I come back, I'm so refreshed and I have so much more clarity. And a lot of the noise and the busyness of stuff that I should have never been doing in the first
Mhm.
place is gone. It's like pushing this gigantic reset button.
Yeah.
And so instead of getting stuck in like spending all this time doing things that I shouldn't be doing, so is it a waste of time? No. It's like cleaning up your desk because then you can actually see what's there, right? Or cleaning up your mind so then you can actually see what's going on in there, what should be going on in there. It's just like it's just like that. It's like that spring cleaning or whatever. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
existential spring cleaning of your
yeah,
life
yeah.
and well-being and yourself. But what are some of the practical things that you do, like 48 hours before you leave, and then like 48 hours after you return to make that transition smoother for yourself? Like, what are some of the things?
Yeah, so I mean, I would start even before that. Like I would start like what do I do 48 days before or even like maybe a
Mm,
couple months before. I'm very vocal about it or try to be very vocal about it because I think it's important that you're not like sneak attack, right? Like it's like
yeah,
no, I'm going to be gone for this time. Everybody, I want you all to know I'm not trying to surprise anybody. I'm not trying to sneak attack. I am trying to make sure that I'm setting everybody up for success during that time. So I think that that's really important because one, as you start to talk to people about it, I couldn't believe how many people I'd never heard of this city before. But once I started talking about it, like how many people knew somebody or had been there or had a good recommendation. Like it was just so cool to kind of figure out all these connections that I didn't even know existed, but also because then people could prepare for it, right? Like people could actually figure out like what they were going to do or what they needed from me before I went and I could set us up for success. So I think that's part of it is just like making sure that the right people who need to know so that they can be set up for success and you can be set up for success, that they have that awareness and that you're putting a plan in place for the time that you're gone so that you're not thinking about it. You don't want to be on your thing like, oh man, I should have got that done or I didn't finish this. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I think is important is putting it in your schedule, like literally mapping it out. Like putting the block in, holding it in the time. So on our calendar, before the new year starts, it says Deanna and Justin out for sabbatical. So before this year started in like late October, our sabbatical for this year was already put on the calendar for the following year.
yeah,
Because again, it's held. The time is held. And it's held actually more for me so that
mhm,
I'm reminded that this is important and that I'm not going to encroach on it. So I think that's another thing.
yeah,
I think right before it's happening, I think that's the time to really start to think about what is coming with me and what is not coming with me.
mm,
And what are my rules? Right? So one rule is like and the rules are different for every sabbatical, but there's always got to be a rule about my computer. When does the computer come out? Does the computer come with me? What apps get deleted from my phone? What apps get deleted from the computer?
yeah,
Right? That's important because I know who I am. I know I'm nosy, right?
yeah,
So I gotta protect myself in those times. So those are some of the things I think that kind of lead up into it. It's just thinking about what do you want that experience to look like, and how are you structuring it before you go?
And I love this, like, structuring the experience, and you've gotten so good at it, you've done it so many times that you're starting to do it for other people, and, like, the best way that I see now is because 'cause you've been talking and coaching up people about how to take
Mhm.
their own sabbatical, but you have, like, more structured opportunities, especially around purposeful pause, to kind of walk people through that, and that's coming up soon. Can you tell us more about it and what you're trying to do there and what's going on?
Absolutely, I could talk about this all day, but I
Yeah.
won't. Yeah, so Purposeful Pause is coming up, and we're going to that same city that I just mentioned. So we're going to San Miguel de Allende. We are actually going to be there May 12th through May 16th, and I am taking 10 women. There's only a few spots left, but we're going to be doing a purposeful pause. Now, this
Mm.
was really intentional. I named it this way intentionally. For many of you, you know that I wrote the book Purposeful Hustle. And one of the things that I have learned, especially in the last, I would say, 7, 8 years. Oh, look at you, Justin. Okay, I see
Keep it close by.
but one of the things that I have learned in the last few years, I always knew this, but I didn't name it, right? And I
Mm,
didn't was that before the hustle, there has to be this time of discernment. There has to be this time of really like deep reflection. There has to be this time of like thoughtfulness. And so being able to name it and actually walk people through the process of what it looks like is really important to me. I've been, like you said, I've been coaching people on this for decades. Like, this is what I do. These are the questions that I ask myself. This is the documents that I use. This is how I chart it. This is how I test myself on it. This is how I talk about it. Because people are always like, Deanna, how did you start that company? How did you write that book? How did you do this? And literally everything that I've ever done has always started with this purposeful pause. And so to be able to do that with other people has brought me great joy. And I've been able to see how it's like transformed their ability to get things done. So to be able to do this now with a cohort of people is super, super exciting. I've been wanting to do it since 2019. 2020 came and like messed that all up. And then we just life happened. And but it's always been like burning in the back of my mind. And so as I was doing my purposeful pause, and then Justin and I always have a purposeful pause that we do together. This last year in 2024, I was like, you know what? This is the year. I'm not gonna let it go again. Like, this is the year we're doing it. And to be able to do it in a city that
yeah,
really they call it the Magic City. That's what they call San Miguel de Allende. And rightfully so. It's
yeah.
gorgeous. There's just a vibe in that city, but to be able to do that there in a city that has really embraced me, embraced my family. So I didn't tell the rest of the story. We went for sabbatical for a month. Then a couple years later, we went for another month. And then we actually loved it so much that we were like, hey, let's live here. So we actually lived for like almost 7 months. The kids went to school there. We did all the things. We did all the things. It was amazing. So to be able to bring other people to a community that we fell in love with and that really embraced us is also bringing me great joy.
Mhm.
See, I told you I could just talk and talk and talk and talk about it, but that's what's happening.
Very nice. And then so, like, people who are going through it, what can they expect? Like, we have your experience leading up to it, why you're doing it, kind of the broad headlines of what's going to be entailed, but why should people want to do this?
Well, the first thing is that, Justin, there's like a sense of heaviness that I think people are experiencing in different ways, but kind of universally experiencing.
Mhm.
And so one of the biggest things is just being able to have a space of joy, to have a space to relax,
Yeah.
have a space to have some fun. That's really important to me. And so all of those things will happen with the activities that we have planned. There will be numerous opportunities for really beautiful cultural experiences just in the city. I think that that's important for people to be able to experience. The other thing is that I'm going to walk everybody through just the reflection process that we use. My goal is for everybody to get a chance to do it, but also for everybody to walk away with a tool so that they can use it for the rest of their lives. However often they want to be able to use it. So this idea of being able to relax, to have fun, to reflect, but to also experience the culture is the goal of this purposeful pause.
Very awesome. And in times of great uncertainty, it's valuable to learn how to do stuff, but more than ever before, it's important to learn and relearn who we are. And the best way to do that is to take a purposeful pause. So it sounds like an awesome opportunity that's very appropriate and important now more than ever. Awesome.
Yay. I hope if anybody's interested, you can just reach out to us and we're happy to chat with you about the process and who's going and kind of all of the things. But even if you decide that that's not you or this is not the time, I would just encourage anybody who's listening to really think about what you're doing and to think about how you can engage. If a sabbatical means like 6 hours for you, or it means a day for you, or it means 3 or 4 days, just, someplace that brings you to whatever it means to you. Just thinking about how you can bring that into your life, maybe bring that into your family's life, and just make it part of your routine because you're important and your mental health is important. Your purpose is important. Being able to make time and space for you is important, and we need you to be able to show up fully. We need you to be able to show up in a way that only you can show up. And it's really hard to do that when you're feeling really scattered or unsure or um, alone.
Right.
So So I just, regardless, of I just hope that this conversation, the way we talked about it, that you understand and can see just how important being able to put some of this practice in your own life is, and that you'll do it.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us for another uplifting conversation. We will see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.